For every loved anime parent, there's one who is hated by everyone. Starting with Endeavour Todoroki. Endeavor's entire life can be summed up in one image. Standing on a podium, second place, again. First place, All Might. And Endeavour? Burning alive with rage he couldn't quite hide. See, Endeavour didn't just want to be number one, he needed it. After his father died when Endeavour was just a teenager, he made a promise. He'd reach the top, no matter what it cost, even if it meant sacrificing his family. Endeavour realized something chilling. He would never surpass All Might. His quirk, powerful as it was, had limits. He would always overheat if he used his powers too much. So if he couldn't be number one, maybe his child could. That's when Endeavour did something unforgivable. He arranged a quirk marriage, not out of love but for genetics, and married Rei Himura, a woman with an ice quirk that could balance his flames. The perfect combination. The perfect mother to create the perfect child. At 22, Endeavour held his firstborn for the first time, Toya. When that baby's eyes opened, brilliant blue, burning with potential, Endeavour smiled. And for a moment, just a moment, Endeavour felt something other than ambition. He felt hope. Because Toya's flames, they burned hotter than Endeavour's, hotter than anyone had seen. This was it, his masterpiece, his future #1 hero. Finally, his legacy had arrived. Endeavour threw himself into training Toya, pushed him harder than any father should. And Toya, he loved it, loved the attention, loved making his father proud. Until one day, Toya collapsed. The hospital delivered the diagnosis Endeavour didn't want to hear. Toya had inherited the worst genetic combination possible. His mother's resistance to cold in a body that produced fire. Every time Toya used his quirk, he wasn't just training. He was burning himself alive from the inside out. Endeavour made a choice. He stopped the training, stopped the attention. To Endeavour, this was mercy, protection. To Toya, it felt like abandonment, like he'd failed, like he was suddenly worthless. And you might think the story ends there, but for the Todoroki family, that was only the beginning. Eventually, Endeavour would find his masterpiece in baby Shoto, who possessed both the fire and ice quirk. A child who could generate ice without freezing, fire without overheating. Endeavour was excited. Finally, he could surpass All Might through his son. All of his efforts had been rewarded. Immediately he got to work. From that moment, everything changed. All his other children, Toya, Natsuo, and Fuyumi, became invisible to him. And for the golden boy, Shoto became a prisoner, forced to train for hours, isolated from his siblings, punched when he failed. All while his father stood over him, flames burning, screaming, "You will surpass All Might." Endeavour trained him like a soldier. So much so that he came to hate his fire quirk, relying only on ice. But for Toya, the story would get much darker. Because Toya would never stop training, even after his doctors warned him, his father scolded him and his body burnt from the flames. One day, on Sokoto Peak, Toya waited patiently to show his father how strong he had become. But he never came. All that training, all that pain, all those burns he'd given himself, for nothing. His father didn't care, didn't even care enough to show up. Realizing that his father would not come to see him, the 13-year-old Toya would end up burning himself and the entire forest on Sokoto Peak. The same flames he'd mastered to earn his father's love consumed him alive. By the time anyone arrived, Sokoto Peak was ash, the forest gone, and Toya, they never found a body, only burn marks, scorched earth, and a child's dream, incinerated. But Toya didn't heal, he burned. And somewhere along the way, the desperate son died. In his place emerged a killer, a man responsible for over 30 deaths. 10 years later, he returned. What came back was something else entirely. No longer Toya Todoroki, the desperate son, but Dabi, a villain fueled by one singular purpose: destroy the hero, Endeavour Todoroki. It's no surprise that Dabi would become one of the main antagonists in the final seasons, because his story isn't just about villainy. It's about a father who pushed his child so far that he broke and abandoned him when he did. And that is why everyone hates Endeavour Todoroki. He created his own worst enemy, not through battle, but through neglect. In contrast, fans have only ever had good things to say about Loid Forger. But here's the thing about the world's greatest spy. Loid Forger built his family on a lie. His wife, an assassin who needed a fake husband, his daughter, an orphan he adopted for a mission. Everything, from their home address to their breakfast routine, was calculated, scripted, fake. Operation Strix demanded perfection, and Loid delivered. But somewhere between the fake smiles and scripted dinners, something unexpected happened. The lie became real. The man who'd trained himself to feel nothing, who'd buried every emotion to become the perfect spy, started to care. Not because the mission required it, but because he couldn't help it. But Loid didn't have an easy upbringing. He lost both parents within the space of a year. Then, 6 years later, his childhood friends were ambushed and killed. But instead of letting those experiences harden him, he turned them into his mission: to create a world where children wouldn't have to cry the way he did. And that's what makes Loid different from someone like Endeavour. They both lost everything. Both buried loved ones. Both carried scars that never healed. But where Endeavour used his pain as an excuse to hurt others, even children, Loid used his pain as motivation to protect them. You can see it in how he treats Anya. She messes up constantly, fails tests, causes scenes, nearly blows his cover. And he doesn't just forgive her for her bad deeds alone. When she gets a stellar star and gets close to Damien, he celebrates, showing how much he cares. And it's not just Anya alone. When Yor is bullied by others, he stands up for her. Surprisingly, other kids like Damien Desmond, the son of Loid's actual target, aren't excluded from his kindness. When Damien's father dismisses him coldly, Loid speaks up, not because it helps the mission, but because he sees a lonely kid and remembers what that felt like. It's safe to say everyone would want a father like Loid Forger, but not everyone would get a father like him. In fact, some would be deeply hurt by their parent. Meet the Iguro Clan, a family who didn't work for their wealth, who didn't build businesses or master trades. No, they had a much simpler way of making money. They sold their children to a demon, not because they had to, not out of desperation or starvation, but because it was easier than working. The Aguro family were a clan of ladies who offered their newborns to the snake demon in exchange for expensive items like clothes, meals, money, and other luxuries. For 370 years, this operation ran. Generations of Iguro women bearing children, not to raise them, not to love them, but to trade them. Until one day, something unexpected happened. They had a boy. The demon had never tasted a boy before, much less one with rare eyes. To her, Obanai wasn't a child, he was a delicacy. So instead of eating him immediately, they locked him up, fed him through the bars, fed him until he puked, then fed him more. Slit his mouth ear to ear so he'd smile, just like the demon did. Months passed, then years, fattening him up for slaughter, making him perfect. But Obanai didn't want to die. So one night, while the women slept off their luxury, he made a choice. He squeezed through, and he ran. But back at the Aguro estate, the snake demon realized he was gone, and she was furious. For 370 years, the Aguro women had kept their bargain, fed her, pleased her, given her everything she wanted. And the one time she didn't get her meal, she slaughtered them all. Every woman, every child, all because one boy refused to be eaten. By morning, the Aguro clan was erased, 50 people gone. All because one boy refused to be eaten. But when she went after Obanai, the flame Hashira, Shinjuro Rengoku, stepped in. And for the first time in 370 years, someone fought back. The snake demon fell, and with her, centuries of evil died. Obanai, for the first time in his life, was free. But while some families sacrificed their children for wealth, Grisha Yeager would give up everything to make his children happy. And it destroyed him twice. Grisha Yeager wasn't always the perfect father. In fact, his failures with his first son didn't just hurt that child. They destroyed an entire resistance movement. Born in Mali's Liberio internment zone, Grisha's witnessing of his sister's murder at the hands of government officials would push him to be hard on his first son, Zeke Yeager, teaching him to become an Eldian spy and the true history of his people. Zeke was 7 years old when Grisha started training him. At first, Zeke tried to be the son Grisha wanted. He learned the history, memorized the plans, played his part, but he was 7 years old, and the weight of it, the lies, the fear, the constant danger, was crushing him. Every night, he had nightmares about being caught. He tried to tell Grisha he couldn't do it, but Grisha didn't hear him, couldn't hear him. Because to Grisha, this wasn't about Zeke, it was about Faye, about every Eldian who'd ever been murdered for existing. And Zeke, 7 years old, drowning under expectations he never asked for, made a choice. Zeke betrayed his parents to Mali. The soldiers came at dawn, arrested every single person who'd trusted him. Grisha's comrades, his friends, people who'd risked everything because they believed in him. They were taken to Paradise Island, and one by one, they were injected with Titan serum, then transformed. And Grisha could only watch, knowing his son, his own child, had done this to them. Years later, when Grisha found himself inside the walls with a new life, a new wife, a new son, he made himself a promise: never again. When Eren asked questions, Grisha answered honestly, but didn't burden him with missions. When Eren dreamed of the outside world, Grisha didn't crush it, he encouraged it. When Eren made mistakes, Grisha didn't punish, he taught. He gave Eren what he'd stolen from Zeke, a childhood. It's the classic first child story. Parents who realize too late that love matters more than discipline. The firstborn suffers from expectations, while the younger one gets the warmth they never had. You're proud they learned, but it still hurts knowing they learned at your expense. But unlike your parents, Grisha still apologizes to Zeke for all the errors he committed. When he finally saw Zeke again, decades later, in the paths, Grisha didn't make excuses, didn't justify his actions. He apologized. "I'm sorry, Zeke, I was a terrible father. I should have just played catch with you." He couldn't undo the damage, but he could acknowledge it, and sometimes, that's all a broken child needs to hear. He may not have been the perfect parent, but he was one who learned from his mistakes and improved. In a world full of fathers who refuse to do that, that matters. And that's what makes him a loved parent. It's tragic that Grisha was manipulated by Eren, his own son, but the next father would do the manipulation himself. Kenjaku doesn't become a father the normal way. He doesn't marry, doesn't fall in love, doesn't build families. He creates them through violation, through body theft, through his cursed technique, brain transplantation. Even failed fathers see their children as human. Kenjaku doesn't. To him, people aren't people, they're experiments. For Yuji Itadori, this was personal. His mother, Kaori, she had a life, a husband, dreams of starting a family, until Kenjaku took her body and wore her like a disguise. Then, using her body, her voice, her face, he fathered Yuji. His mother was never really his mother, just a puppet controlled by a 1,000-year-old monster. To Kenjaku, Yuji wasn't his son, he was Data. His grandfather passed away in his presence, his friend Junpei gets transfigured before his eyes, Nanami, his mentor, gets exploded by Mahito, and then Sukuna takes over his body, forces him to watch as his own hands massacre thousands of innocent people in Shibuya. And through it all, Kenjaku observes, records, analyzes how his experiment handles trauma, feels nothing. For Kenjaku, suffering doesn't matter as long as he gets what he wants. But Yuji wasn't Kenjaku's only experiment. He also uses Suguru Geto's identity to trap Gojo. Imagine seeing your best friend's face, hearing his voice, watching him smile, but knowing that your friend is dead. That this is just his corpse being puppeteered by someone else. When Gojo saw Geto in Shibuya, he froze, just for a second. And that second cost him everything. Sealed away, trapped for months while Kenjaku, wearing his best friend's face, destroyed everything Gojo had spent his life protecting. Kenjaku's allies thought they were safe. They thought they were partners, but they were wrong. When Mahito barely survived his battle with Yuji in Shibuya, when he came to Kenjaku for help, for safety, Kenjaku absorbed him, not to save him, to steal his technique. Mahito, who thought he was special, who thought he mattered, was just another resource to be harvested. And later, Kenjaku admitted he would have done the same to Jogo, if only Jogo hadn't died first. The curses thought they were building a new world together. Kenjaku was just collecting tools. Most fathers, even the terrible ones, at least see their children as human. Endeavour saw Shoto as a weapon, but still his son. Grisha Yeager saw Zeke as a soldier, but still his child. Some fathers fail their children through weakness, through fear, through trauma they never processed. Kenjaku wasn't failing his children, because he never saw them as children to begin with. And that makes him one of the most terrifying fathers in anime. But not all parents are monsters. Some parents, even when they have nothing, give everything. Meet Belle Mere, a former Marine, a troublemaker, and one of the most beloved mothers in all of anime, who gave her daughters Nami and Nojiko unconditional love and support. Before adopting the girls, Belle Mere used to be a bit of a troublemaker, someone who didn't fit into quiet village life. Eventually, she signed up for the Marines to put her skills to good use and left the village. But during one expedition, Belle Mere's unit was ambushed. She barely survived, and in the aftermath, surrounded by death and destruction, she found them. Two orphaned girls, alone, starving, terrified. Nojiko desperately trying to keep her baby sister alive. Belle Mere was wounded, barely able to walk herself. She had no money, no home, no plan. Despite protests from other members of Kokoyashi village, who thought she was too young, too poor, too reckless. And Nami and Nojiko, who'd lost everything in the war, finally had a mother, someone who chose to love them. Belle Mere was always there, cooking meals, singing songs, and sometimes going hungry herself. The girls believed her, but the villagers knew the truth. But Belle Mere wasn't just all nice and no spark. When Nojiko teaches Nami how to steal, she scolds both of them, firmly, lovingly. And even when Nami accuses them of not being family, Belle is quick to discipline her, reminding them all that family is beyond just being related by blood. But it's what she does when Arlong visits Kokoyashi village that makes her the most loved mother in all of anime. When Arlong arrived, he demanded a ransom for every life, 50,000 berries for kids and 100,000 berries for adults. Belle Mere, being a single mother of two, can only afford 100,000 berries. The math was simple. She could say the girls weren't hers, that she was just a single woman, pay for herself, survive. And the girls would go to the orphanage, or worse. But Arlong didn't care about family, didn't care about love, he cared about money, and Belle Mere didn't have enough. Nami and Nojiko screamed, begged, tried to run to her. And Belle Mere, knowing these were her last moments, smiled at them. "I love you both so much. Thank you for letting me be your mother." And then she was gone. Even in death, Belle Mere still announced her love for Nami and Nojiko. Her sacrifice became the foundation of Nami's dream, to free her village and map the world she never got to see. But while Belle Mere died to protect her daughters, some fathers want their daughters dead. Meet Ogi Zen'in, a man who didn't just hate his daughters, Maki and Mai. He actively plotted to end them, personally. When Maki arrives at the tools room, not only does she find it emptied, she also finds her sister, Mai, beaten, bruised, and in a pool of her own blood. All caused by her father, Ogi Zen'in. He wasn't even remorseful for his actions. Instead, he draws his sword and unleashes his Fallen Blossom emotion technique, a death match against his own daughter, and he held nothing back. And as he fought, he screamed at her, "You're the reason I'll never be clan head." Ogi blamed his daughters for his failures, because in the Zen'in clan, daughters were worthless. And having two of them, that marked him as cursed. He didn't see children when he looked at them. He saw the reason he'd never be clan head, the reason other family members mocked him. So he decided to erase them, personally. Not only does he defeat his two children and beat them to a pulp, but he drags them on the dirty floor and throws them down the stairs, into a pit, a place where the Zen'in clan disposed of their failures. Her father didn't just want her dead. He wanted her to know, even in her final moments, that she was worthless. But the sacrifice doesn't end there. Because sometimes, to gain something of value, you must give up something of equal value. And at the bottom of that pit, surrounded by curses, both daughters broken and bleeding, Mai made a choice. She used her curse technique on herself, creating something Maki desperately needed. A tool that could kill any soul. But construction has a price, and the price was her life. Mai smiled, one last time, at the sister she'd always competed with, always envied, always loved, with one promise: destroy everything. And with that, Maki rose, not as the same girl burnt by Jogo, but on equal power as her cousin, Toji, the one who was able to stand toe-to-toe with Gojo Satoru and nearly behead him. So much so that her father realized this, But rather than retreat in the face of overwhelming power, he still had that signature Zenin pride that Toji displayed against Gojo Satoru. And in this situation, the result was no different, because Maki, sparing nothing, ends him. The father who called his daughters worthless, who threw them into a pit to expire, who blamed them for his every failure, passed away at the hands of the daughter he tried to erase. Seriously, why do you need enemies when you have a father like Ogi Zen'in? But while Ogi Zen'in tried to erase his daughters, some father figures prove that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. Meet Piccolo, a Namekian, Goku's former enemy, and the man who became a better father to Gohan than Goku ever was. After Goku dies, something strange happens. He left behind a 4-year-old son, Gohan, and the strangest thing happened. The man who'd once tried to destroy Goku became the father figure Gohan needed. They became so close you could call them father and son, if you can ignore the different skin tones. Because Piccolo didn't just train Gohan, he raised him. Piccolo the Namekian wasn't always on Goku's good side. In fact, they started off as rivals. After Goku ends his dad, the Demon King Piccolo, Piccolo goes into hiding, training day and night. No friends, no family, just pure hate. And then enters the World Martial Arts Competition, grown, angry, and seeking revenge, with one mission: destroy Goku's son. And he succeeds, bruising Goku badly and pushing him to his limits. But this isn't what makes Piccolo a loved anime parent. Because while he would hurt the father, he would treat Gohan like his own son. After Raditz warned that stronger Saiyans would arrive in 1 year, Piccolo made a decision. He'd train Gohan, harsh training, no comfort, survival mode, but also care. Their relationship grew stronger than teacher and student, more like father and son. But his greatest show of love will come during the Saiyan saga against Nappa and Vegeta. After Nappa fires off his energy blast, Gohan froze, a 5-year-old child, staring at death, unable to move, unable to think. And in that split second, Piccolo made a choice. He didn't think, didn't hesitate, just moved. The energy ripped through his body, and as he collapsed, dying, he smiled at the boy, and then he was gone. He didn't have to say he loved Gohan, he just showed it. Although he's brought back to life by the Z fighters using the Dragon Balls, Piccolo's love for Gohan never ends. But even after death and resurrection, even after Goku came back too, Piccolo never stopped being there for Gohan. When Gohan needed training, Piccolo trained him. When Gohan's daughter Pan was born, Piccolo became her protector, playing peekaboo with her and even singing for her when she cries. The fierce warrior, babysitting. And when Goku pushed Gohan too hard, treating him like a warrior instead of a person, Piccolo stood up for him. Because that's what fathers do. But not every child gets a Piccolo. Some children aren't even seen as children, they're treated as commodities. Although we don't get to see him, the short story we hear about him is horrifying. Mr. Uzui had 10 children, and no, he wasn't running the Loud House. He was running the Hunger Games, a battle royale between his own children, to find who would succeed him as clan leader. 7 had already died by the time Tengen turned 15, and for the last 2 standing, a fight to the death. Brother against brother. It was almost like the Viltrumites in Invincible, a twisted belief that only the strongest deserve to live on. Growing up under that cruelty, Tengen could have become cold and ruthless, another killer shaped by violence. But instead, he rejected everything his father stood for, choosing instead to carve his own path as a Hashira in the Demon Slayer Corps. The man his father tried to create, Tengen became the opposite. But not every father in Demon Slayer is bad. Enter Shinjuro Rengoku. Shinjuro's story starts with him saving a young Obanai from the snake demon. And he's so good at his craft that his son is inspired to be the next Flame Hashira. Shinjuro's demon-slaying days, however, do not end happily. When Shinjuro discovers that flame breathing is inferior to sun breathing, he breaks down and cries. The craft which he'd devoted his life to is suddenly looked down upon. It's like studying every day to pass an exam, only to discover that you have been studying the wrong subject or the wrong degree entirely. Not only was sun breathing superior to flame breathing, but no matter how hard he tried, no matter how hard he trained, he could never surpass sun breathing. It's why he punches Tanjiro when they first meet. Not only has he just lost his son, but someone who looks like the sun-breathing Hashira has just arrived on his doorstep. But Shinjuro changes. After hearing his son's final words to him and realizing the error of his ways, he breaks down and cries. Unlike Endeavour Todoroki, who just moves on to the next son and continues his hellish training, Shinjuro apologizes and gets better. He apologizes to Tanjiro, explains sun-breathing to him, and is one of the key people who protect the Ubuyashiki mansion during the final battle against Muzan. While Shinjuro doesn't start off as the most loving father, his actions after learning the errors of his ways make him one of the most loved fathers in the series. But if the Flame Hashira turned out to be one of the most loved fathers in anime, what of the other Hashiras? Find out here in the Most Loved, Most Hated Hashiras video.